All right, so here's today's agenda. It's a little bit busier than normal. If you've been to any of our working groups in the past, you know this is the part where I read our legal disclaimer verbatim that our legal team was gracious enough to provide us. I am communicating in my official capacity on behalf of the FedRAMP Program Management Office at the General Services Administration. To ensure effective engagement and transparency with industry, I will be sharing information based on what I know at the present time. This information I plan to share today is provided to enhance transparency between industry and the FedRAMP PMO, but it's possible some of the information may change at a later date because no final decisions have been made at this time. However, I think it's important to have this dialogue so we can move forward in a transparent manner, but I wanted to make sure that you had content before I got into the substance of my presentation. My commitment to you is to continue this dialogue and share any new developments as soon as I can. Additionally, any reference in this conversation to any specific commercial product, process, or service, or the use of any trade, firm, or corporation name is for the information and convenience of the public and does not constitute endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by GSA. So let's talk just a little bit about some tiny administrative changes that just want to make sure folks are tracking so everyone's on the same page. We started to do a little bit of housekeeping in the discussion forums, and you'll kind of see this across all 4 forums if you're there, right? In order to keep only the relevant discussions active, we've been both locking and closing discussion forums. So for those forums that are still relevant, but we no longer need discussion, we're using the lock capability, right? A good example of this is the discussion post we started for the continuous monitoring standard or the repo transition standard, right? As we develop those standards and we push them out for the request for comment, we'll lock the threads where we initially asked for feedback. And that's because once the RFC goes out, the only place where we can take public comments is in the RFC portals that exist today. So adding commentary onto a discussion forum post RFC doesn't do us any good, so we'll lock them. And once we deem kind of either the conversation's irrelevant or a specific amount of time has passed, we'll actually close those as well, which means they won't be visible in your default view. We are a public forum, right? And so everything will remain public. It just won't be visible once you enter the discussion forums. All you'll have to do is either search it or you can click view closed forums as well, and you'll be able to see it there. And lastly, video migration. May have noticed this, but just wanted to let folks know we are transitioning from posting the Zoom links to posting all the videos to our YouTube channel on FedRAMP. Zoom has a time limited function for recordings, and FedRAMP allows us to keep it in posterity so that it's there past, I think it's a year mark. All right, so RFC terms to know. As we move towards updates to Rev5 and establishing FedRAMP 20X standards and processes, there's a few terms that we want to coalesce around in the working groups, and these will be standard across all 4 working groups. The first one is standards, and I think most of us are familiar with that now, but really the standard is a set of baseline requirements, and these standards are going to be published in a high-level formal guidance that are applicable across FedRAMP cloud service space. Each standard we will work on publishing both a technical assistance document as well as a best practices document as well. Technical assistance provides a little bit more granular level in terms of fidelity and in guidance and applicability to that individual standard. It will adjust as things like new technologies emerge, requests for clarification happen, and those things are worked through. And lastly, best practices, right? These are the TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that we see across cloud service providers that work best when implementing the standard to support kind of maximum shared awareness. These adjustments will allow us to evolve on pace with cloud technology as we support and is in line with the expectations resident in the FedRAMP Authorization Act, right? We pulled these terms straight from the FedRAMP Authorization Act. I put the quote below in terms of roles and responsibilities. From a process flow perspective, right, the first thing you'll always see is the standards. As those become finalized or close to finalized, you'll start to see the technical assistance documents emerge. And then once those are implemented and best practices are identified, we'll start to update and publish best practice documents as well. All right, a lot has happened, I think, the last few weeks. So let's talk about newly released standards. On Friday, I think Friday late afternoon, FedRAMP released the request for comments for the standards for continuous monitoring. We've seen a few discussion posts on this in this group over the last few weeks, and I think we've talked about it, I think, in the past two forums. The goal is to develop an objective-driven assessment of continuous monitoring performance using key security metrics. These metrics can already be obtained using your current continuing monitoring processes. So it shouldn't drastically change your internal processes, but it should lead to better engagements with your agency partners, and should allow both you and them to start from a more informed position versus how we traditionally have done it, of chucking, a dozen spreadsheets in a required FedRAMP template over the fence. Now let's recap, I think, some of the active RFCs that we touched on. We talked through these during the last working group. So if you're looking for a little bit more depth on those, please find that last recording. The 20X phase one pilot website is live, right? We talked about this request for comment out earlier, right? The intent behind this draft is to use a pilot to automate portions of the assessment process through a capabilities-based review. Between our last working group and now, our FedRAMP 20X pilot site is up and running. If you are interested in being part of the phase one pilot, right, which I'll remind you is for FedRAMP low authorization only, the requirements are outlined within our website. The link is here, and we'll publish the slides later today after the meeting. Or you can just go to the FedRAMP Hub homepage, hover over the 20X logo, and you'll see the phase one pilot drop down there. Also, if you are interested in participating, there is the email address link below. What's in it for you, right? Cloud service, qualifying cloud service offerings that successfully complete phase one will receive a 12-month FedRAMP low authorization and will be prioritized for the moderate authorization in phase two. We anticipate that kicking off in early June. So it is moving pretty fast. The detailed timeline is on that website that I just mentioned. The next two active RFCs we've talked about, like I said, in multiple meetings before this. So I'll just kind of go over the high level on these. The significant change notification standard is intended to replace the current significant change request guidance, right? Moving away from the tiered approval process more towards a notification process. The minimum assessment scope standard replaces both the current boundary guidance that's actively in existence. And if you remember last year, we started to update the draft boundary guidance. I believe it was RFC 0004. This standard attempts to simplify really what's in scope and what's out of scope of your FedRAMP assessment, and really gets rid of the notion of, right, like there's this set of static boundaries that is really more of a pre-cloud notion. Both of these are open for comment until 25 May. And in the next few weeks, you'll actually start seeing the technical assistance documents appearing. All right, lastly, RFCs in development for this working group, and one we've pushed a discussion post on last week. And thank you for everyone who has taken a minute to provide feedback. We're in the process of developing a standard as the mechanism for cloud service providers to house their FedRAMP data in a secure yet accessible manner, moving away from a centralized FedRAMP managed repo. Like I said, we dropped a discussion topic in this last week. I want to thank everyone who provided input to that topic. As we're drafting it out, we are using the input provided. There was some input around things like costs and things like that. I would say when the RFC comes out, things associated with additional burden, we can try to tackle as we're developing some of those, but some of those are still important to capture in the formal RFC process too. So please, if you don't see your comment resident in the current draft, please make sure you do place it in the RFC as well. And we have noticed that some of the cloud service providers have already started their transition, their repo transition. If you do that, phenomenal, right? Please, we just ask you to do a few things, right? First off, if you can notify FedRAMP as well as your agencies, right? Step number one, assumed this would be more of a common sense thing, but please, inform FedRAMP, inform the agencies. Also, in your current Connect repo, please drop a file in your folders that identify, hey, here are the new drive links, and here are the points of contact for those folks who need access, so they can contact them. While we do appreciate a lot of the first movers, uncoordinated movement causes a lot of unneeded work on a lot of people. So we just appreciate a little bit of coordination there. Yeah. And lastly, our next meeting's scheduled for May 26th. That is a holiday. It's Memorial Day. I will not be here. Hopefully you will not be here. We will cancel the formal Zoom invite after this meeting for the 26th. I cannot guarantee that it cancels over for whatever domain you're on. So please actively manually cancel that. And our next meeting will be June 9th at 1 p.m. Once again, that should already be on your calendar if you've registered, through Zoom. I think up until the end of the calendar year should be on your calendar. And we are using the same link. So if you haven't, please, put it on your calendar now. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Like I said, there's a lot dropping here. There's a lot currently in the process. There's a lot that dropped last week, and there are things to come. So please be on the lookout. As requests for comments do come in, we will close out the discussion forums. Please do not post there. Please post in the formal RFC discussion forum topics. That is the only place we are allowed to take comments once the RFCs drop. So once again, thank you everyone for your participation, and I will see you not in 2 weeks, but I guess 4.